Welcome to the Stewardship Leader Podcast, brought to you by the Christian Stewardship Network. CSN exists to teach and equip church leaders the biblical perspective on finances so they can speak with authority, confidence, and integrity. To learn more, visit us at christianstewardshipnetwork.com. Well, hey everyone, welcome to Stewardship Leader. I'm Leo Sabo, and today I have Dr. Shane Innett back with us to talk about investing. And in this last episode, we're talking about the future of investing. Shane, say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone. So good to be here.
I'm glad that you've been with us these last 3 weeks. If you've listened to the podcast, then of course this will close us out for this series of podcasts on investing. But if you've not had a chance to listen to them, we do encourage you to go back and listen to the previous one. Start with the first one, and of course, to kind of build on each other, starting with the history all the way up until this one. So Shane will do a quick review as we get started. But just thank you for being here. Shane, I'll let you get started. A couple of things about Shane, if this is the first time listening. He is the assistant professor of finance at Biola University. He's also written a book, Whole Heart Finances, and has a website, wholeheartfinances.com, where you can learn more about him. I'll share more about that toward the end of the podcast, but I wanted you to know who is speaking today. Shane, again, thanks for being here.
Yeah, no. So during week one or podcast one, we talked about how investing has kind of evolved over time, leading towards kind of our current world we live in, where there's mutual funds and ETFs and stocks. And in podcast two, we talked about how given all these different choices, you end up with investing strategies and philosophies that you can adopt. And so I tried to present some of the major ones that people have adopted and compare and contrast them and show off kind of the choices you make when you adopt different strategies like growth versus value or fundamental versus technical, bottom up versus top down. And then podcast three, we talked about just the evolution of a Christian response to investing and how Christians really led the way on watching how investing creates culture and helping to have a type of response where when they see investing's gone too far and it's creating bad culture. Really, it's been the Christian kind of church that has led in trying to help rein back what's going on and help inform culture and companies on their products and services are actually harming us and we should change direction. And we also talked about the current investing marketplace and what's available and how it's evolved as well, and the screening tools that you could use to see how your investing is creating and shaping culture. And it's probably, if you haven't looked, it's probably there's some good culture being made and some bad culture being made. And so, what type of response should you have? And it's really a matter of wisdom, of discernment, of conscience, your heart and your head kind of seeking the Lord's will. Today, I really want to move towards what I'm seeing and what people are predicting is the future of investing, and really how we can, as Christians, help shape that future and not just be passive, but also guard ourselves from it, from the dangers, if you will. One of the first kind of futuristic things that's happened over the last maybe 10, 15 years is this idea of robo-investing. So I'm going to start there. The first robo-advisor was in 2008, and it was a company called Betterment and Wealthfront. They were really the two companies that helped start this idea. And what it is traditionally when you wanted to invest, you would find a professional, an advisor or a financial planner, a broker, and usually kind of, went on the yellow pages or went to a local firm, or you knew someone, a friend or a person in church, and then they would take custody of your money so that they would have it kind of in their custodial bank, and then they would make decisions. They would buy certain stocks and buy certain mutual funds on your behalf, and they would make hopes about that they would grow, and you'd have certain investment goals. The robo-advisor said, what these people are doing is pretty algorithmic. And I'm going to do a parallel here. So if you've ever watched a football game, the way announcers commentate is actually very algorithmic. And so when you play Madden, and watched my nephew, he's been playing these football video games. They have the algorithmic commentary, and it's almost identical to a live game. Like there's almost zero difference in the algorithmic commentary that's just a robot and the actual commentary, because it's kind of like they stay safe in what they say. And so in the same way, so often what brokers and advisors were doing was pretty plain. I mean, they call them closet indexers, which means that they were basically just picking stocks in a plain way, and you could have gotten better return, same or better, without paying a fee by just buying a basket of a list of companies called an index fund. And so, based on kind of that mediocrity of the average advisor planner, they said we should just have people fill out a questionnaire which shows off whether they like risk or don't like risk. What's their risk appetite? How risky should they be? Should they go into like smaller stocks that are riskier, more international stocks that are riskier, or stay kind of with large, safe companies? So you fill out the questionnaire, and then a robot just kind of gives you a bunch of stocks and a bunch of mutual funds. The robot then will do what the advisor would do, which is rebalance after every 6 months or so, rebalance as you age, move towards safer things as you get closer to retirement. And then instead of paying 1% to this advisor, or maybe even higher, you're paying 0.3, 0.4. And so the advent of the robo advisor was really a significant moment of showing off a future of investing where maybe we could just have a computer do it. Like, and this was largely led by ETFs. Before, whenever you wanted to buy a mutual fund, you had to put in a trade, and then you had to wait till the end of the day for the trade to go through. And it was like, it's just a little more stagnant. But ETFs are traded on the market like a stock, and so they can be traded anytime. And so a computer can trade an ETF a lot easier. And so computers, want that kind of good liquidity of buying anytime. As Betterment showed off this kind of way and Wealthfront of trading, then all of the other product people like Vanguard and Schwab and Fidelity, they all launched their own robo advising platforms. Nowadays, what an investor can do is they can choose to go to a person, pay the higher fee. They could do it on their own and just like open an account and then just trade on their own. Or they could do something in between, which is go to a robo platform and then have a little bit of an assistance. And the first to do this was tax planning with TaxSlayer and TurboTax. That took away the H&R Block person quite a bit. And they still, H&R Block has evolved and now they're online. But before, you had to go drive over, bring your documents, talk to a person who was half asleep. And my wife has a story of a tax planner where she went into their office and they were literally sleeping. Like they literally fell asleep while she was talking to them. Tax planning is pretty straightforward. And in so many ways, investment planning is pretty straightforward that a computer can do it. And so you have that kind of feature of, well, what if a computer can do this, what else can a computer do on our behalf? I'm curious your take. So this idea of, can robo investing replace the advisor, the wealth manager? What do you think?
Well, I think there are some benefits to the robo advisor because investing is so emotional, right? It's driven by emotions, and as you said in an earlier episode, finding what your psychological temperament, all so many things that play into it. Um, that when you have a person that's trying to talk you off the ledge is different than if you just entrusted the whole process to set criterias that you put in place and agree to beforehand. So I think there are benefits to a robo advisor simply because it prevents you from, well, doing what the market usually
Yeah.
does, which is be driven by your own emotions or whatever's happening in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's this commodification of all financial services. So it started with tax and then investing, retirement. You're seeing it now. The next kind of frontier is in estate planning. So you're seeing all these computers now creating and drafting power of attorney and wills and even trusts. And at this point, never trust a robot to do a trust document. Like that is never a good idea, or even a will. I think it will at some point get to where you can do a lot of your estate planning algorithmically through these kind of apps. And yeah, I think as we have the commodification of different types of services, I don't think that changes the financial services industry where it makes it illegitimate, because there's zero chance that the average household will want to talk to a computer when it comes to their life's wealth. Like there's no chance that they don't want to talk to someone. Like you always want to talk to someone. You don't want to just not, say, oh, the computer has now, I've given my whole life's dreams and goals and aspirations to a computer and I don't need to talk to anyone. So you need to talk to someone. And so what's changed is the value proposition of an advisor or planner is much different. It used to be that they could create the portfolio, or they could do the tax service, or they could kind of create the Monte Carlo for the retirement plan, which is when you project out 1,000 trials of future stock market experience and say, what's the probability that you'll succeed in your retirement, depending on 1,000 different views of what the stock market could do. So if it's 90% means 90% of those 1,000 trials you succeeded in having enough money to retire. Sometimes I throw out terms that I know. I'm like, oh, pastors probably don't know what Monte Carlo means. But so usually the planner advisor was spending all their time working through all of that, and then they didn't have much time to actually talk to the client. They just would kind of slide the report and say, here's all the data, here's all the analysis. But what this is doing is you can just push a button as a planner and all of that data comes. And so then all of your time is spent talking about what they call financial psychology, financial coaching, financial counseling, where you're really helping clients understand what they value, what their authentic goals are, what their money scripts are, their money personality. And so you're working through real stuff and coaching them. And that's a beautiful change. I think that's a really good change. So it leverages a planner's time towards people instead of just the systems. And so you can have really good, not be, a stock picking pro and still do really good stock analysis, not be a tax planning pro, but do really good tax analysis because the computers are doing it. And, but then now you have kind of like more leverage. To me, that's kind of the beauty of what's happening. It does kick out the people who don't know how to talk to people, which I think is a good evolution, but it will move towards more, you're a good planner, you'll be good in this industry if you're good with people, if you really can listen and coach and be more of a facilitator instead of an advice giver, helping clients come up with their own solutions, walking through life with them. Yeah, that's a great value proposition that technology is helping give us time to do.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the interesting thing is, as you were speaking, I was thinking of I've done a lot of financial counseling and coaching over the years, and people never really comment on you had such great tools. No one had great tools like your tools, and your tools is what helped me. The tools were secondary. It's the advice. It was being able to help them understand the motivation behind their spending and everything that was going on. So this is similar, right? You said that the advisor who understands people, understands how to walk them and counsel them through by having the right data. I mean, you do need the right data, you do need the right information so that when the time comes for them to act, they actually have something that they can act on.
Yeah.
But that's secondary. And to spend most of your time in that and not be able to communicate it effectively, that I can see how that makes you not a very good um, advisor, right? Because you're full of data, but you have no idea how to communicate it and how to help them implement that into their own decisions and their investment temperament and kind of the way they do things, right? You have to know what motivates them and how to help them achieve what they're trying to achieve.
And it's all extrinsic. So in the past, if you just say, oh, if you don't have time to talk about their goals, or you have 5 minutes and they say, oh, I'd like to retire when I turn 65, and then you just run with that, then that actually may not be their actual authentic goal. Like that may not be consistent with who they are, and it just is something they heard. And they actually don't want to retire at 65. They actually like their work, but someone told them they should. And so it gives you more time to move towards intrinsic goals that are more likely to motivate the client. They say, the majority of advice you give to a client in a financial relationship, clients don't do. And largely because it's just extrinsic of their worldview, of their heart, and I've done a lot of research on how if you are trying to discern the goals of a client, you shouldn't just stop at a financial goal. You need to look at their values, which are informed by their worldview. If you flesh that all out, then you get some beautiful movement where the client sees actually what they want authentically, and you're not pushing a worldview on them because that's not your role. But your role is as a fiduciary to figure out what do they really want, what would really bless them. And as you do identify worldviews within clients, they start to see the Christian worldview if they haven't seen it before. And it's a shining worldview. I mean, it just makes all the other worldviews look a little bit glim and muddy compared to me. I mean, and this is my view as a Christian, but it's a fragrance of life. And so for others, it could be a fragrance of death, as the scriptures say. But I just think it's so loving to help people understand their worldview that resonates with them. And then that usually creates movement towards, more truth. So they'll start to move towards truth in general, which the Christian worldview captures. Everyone has a worldview, whereas not everyone says that they're religious. So it's a neat thing. But that's probably a story. That's one thing in the future I hope will happen is people go deeper with values, and they don't just say, oh, I value family, I value, inheritance or whatever, but they actually look at how do you view reality? What's consistent with reality to you in terms of financial planning? And like a Eastern pantheist, they view the material world and wealth as an illusion. So if you're creating a financial plan around building and accumulating wealth, that's a huge violation of the worldview. And they may go along with it, but it's not at all something they're going to get excited about. And so I would love a future where we get more spiritual normalization of discussion of how prime reality works so that people can actually have money be consistent with who they are at the moment, and I think when that happens in a normalizing spiritual discussion, then there'll be more ability for us to share our faith naturally and organically. So 2 other movements I want to talk about briefly. With technology has come the democratization of private markets. So before, the only thing the average investor could access was the stock market, and that's called public markets. So like you can get some stocks, you could maybe get some bonds, and private markets are where, like Shark Tank, that's a private market where these individuals are coming in and you can invest in these new ideas as a shark, a venture capitalist. Real estate, most people aren't able to just buy up shares of a direct real estate transaction. There's even, like lending, most people aren't able to kind of access lending deals where you are lending your money to, let's say, businesses that are struggling at higher interest rates. So what's happened is typically you had to be an accredited investor. You had to have, more than 2 million. You had to have all these kind of boxes checked to be able to access a private market deal, which tends to have some really neat features. But technology and blockchain, which I'll talk about in a little bit, is creating platforms where normal, smaller investors are able to access these deals. So we have equity crowdfunding platforms that are creating direct access. So a few that I looked at were Republic, Seed Invest, Start Engine. You get to invest in movie deals. You get to invest in small business products. You get to do venture capital like Crowdfunder or Venture 51. So you get to kind of just do high risk, high return. It's interesting if you did a small allocation to this kind of thing. 1031 exchanges are where you actually get to access direct real estate transactions. And that's for the average investor.
This episode of the Stewardship Leader podcast is sponsored by Mortarstone. Mortarstone is an innovative platform tailored for church leaders, offering strategic resources to cultivate a culture of generosity within church communities. It provides insights into giving patterns and member engagement and enables church leaders to make informed decisions, personalize outreach, and nurture a spirit of giving. Mortarstone stands as a partner in ministry, transforming individual generosity into collective growth and meaningful impact for the church. For more information, connect with us online. Visit mortarstone.com.
Peer-to-peer lending, P2P lending, is where retail investors can lend to companies. So you get higher rates of return, more risk. A Lending Club or Prosper are two groups that are doing that. ETFs are these, traded products that you can buy like a stock, and they're now giving you exposure to super exotic things like hedge funds and private equity companies, and direct commodities like wheat or soybeans, or oil, or even crypto. And so we have just a private investing that's going out to the masses, and that's going to be the future for sure. It's happening. I think it's very dangerous, just because the thing that I don't like the most is they made it so that only accredited investors could access it for a reason, because they were more sophisticated and they understood the language. They understood how to read these long legal documents. They had enough wealth so they could lose it. But people won't quite realize how risky these are and how illiquid they are, where you might not get your money for years. And that's one thing I love about private markets, is you don't get into a gambling mentality as much, because you're just locked in for so long. You're locked in for 7 years. So for many reasons, I love access to private markets for the average investor, but there are also going to be crazy fees that no one's going to know about, because with private markets, you can embed really high fees, and they'll net them and they'll hide them and you won't ever see them. Whereas in public markets, the fees are very transparent. And for legal, like the SEC and all the legal watchdogs have forced companies to make it transparent, but there's not as much regulation, especially when investors are trying to get into direct real estate deals. I'm always trying to protect, when it's involved in something I'm involved in, like, what are your fees? And they're really dodgy about telling you about fees. And sometimes they're egregious, but it's really hard to find them. So those are the kind of the dangers, but there's also great opportunity with that.
Yeah, but it leaves it to the individual to make sure that they, again, know what they're doing and they're doing their due diligence, which is good advice no matter where you're investing. But this especially is an important area to look at.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to mention, which is the thing, the thing, is blockchain and AI is going to be largely driving the future of investing. So people, blockchain I love, crypto I don't love. So people usually kind of conflate the two, but they're different. So blockchain is a technology that came about that it's changing all of our culture. And really, what blockchain does is it solves a really hard problem that we've had for all of civilization. And I think a good story about what it solves is, if have you ever tried to sell something used to a stranger, like through Facebook Marketplace or through OfferUp, or nowadays you can kind of maybe just mail it, but traditionally you have to find a meeting place and then you transact. So, I had a friend who had an iPad, and they wanted to sell their iPad, and they found a parking lot, and they went to the parking lot, and then this big Escalade rolls up, and then the window goes down, and then the person's like, "Oh, let me see it." And the person and my friend, I don't know what they were thinking, but they gave them the iPad, and then the person just drove off.
Yep.
And it's really unnerving, dangerous. There's so many things that go wrong when you have to transact actual money with someone you don't know. And so you have to hire an intermediary to make things safe. So with a home, when you buy and sell a home, you have to go through an intermediary of, what's the group?
Realtor or the title company?
Yeah, the title company, and the what's the group that escrow company? Escrow really is the intermediary for the funds that are going back and forth. And so this just is like a drag. If you can think about someone who has 200 extra pounds on them, they're going to go slow. And so much of all of how we transact has this drag on it, because transactions are hard to do, because it usually involves moving money between strangers, and there's a lot of bad actors and you can't trust. And so then you need to hire all these different intermediaries to make things happen. Blockchain is solving all of that. So just so you know, that's the hope of blockchain. And I think it's true. So what blockchain does is it creates a ledger. So a ledger is like an accounting, that's where you keep track of a transaction. So it's a decentralized ledger that's immutable. And so there's some terms here that are hard, but every time a transaction occurs where someone buys and sells something, usually it's a digital file of some sort, then a block is created that has record of that transaction. It gets attached to a chain of previous blocks. It's verified by a decentralized network. So this network is they're not connected. And so you can't just hack the network. And everyone has to verify that transaction. And so once everything's verified, then it attaches to the chain. And so we have then record of the transaction that's immutable, which means it can't get changed. And essentially what it allows us to do is it allows us to transact digital files in a secure way that is less likely to have any kind of hack or mistrust, and it doesn't require an intermediary in the same way. So you can trade digital files in a way that is secure if everything's working well, which is a big caveat. But there's so much that can move towards blockchain that will get rid of all the intermediaries. So the real estate is one example. So escrow can completely go away if you can create a blockchain smart contract. So smart contracts is kind of where we're going, where people are going to be able to transact directly with each other using blockchain. And then you won't need kind of a big group to run it. Health files is another one. So much of hospital administration, healthcare administration is just bogged down by their worry over digital files. And it drives me crazy that when you go to these different health people, none of them know anything about you, and you have to file everything all over again. And how bad for your health if the doctors aren't talking to each other, And so again, blockchain is about helping create information that's secure, and contracts and digital rights that are secure. And then the same thing works with financial securities. So you can have contracts and secure financial transactions. And that really is kind of blockchain enables the ability to transact currency, which is where we get cryptocurrency. So cryptocurrency, you can create your own crypto for $250 at Fiverr, or maybe even a little bit less. There's hundreds of cryptocurrencies that are created every moment. Trump, just created his meme coin crypto. Anyone can create their own crypto. It's just zeros and ones. And so the first major one was Bitcoin. And what that was an algorithm of prime numbers. And so what happens is you mine for this cryptocurrency to find a unique kind of data set that fulfills their requirement. So for Bitcoin, it needs to be a certain sequence of prime numbers. The moment you find that, and it takes a lot of computing power to find it. So these people are mining with big supercomputers. They find it. It took them, let's say, 3 months to find a new Bitcoin. Then the moment they have it, they can now transact with it. They can sell it. And normally you can't sell a digital file of zeros and ones because people could just grab it and you wouldn't know if it was real or fake. But with blockchain, it's now super secure. And so it allowed people to now trade these digital files, and it stays unique, like a coin. And it's like more like something real, like physical. And so then crypto really, it just allows us to trade a digital file and have it be worth something that then people will want to get in exchange for some good or service. So you can buy a car with cryptocurrency. You could transact to buy food and services, and instead of using traditional currency. I don't like cryptocurrency as an investment. I don't like commodities as investments in general. So what people don't quite realize when you buy a commodity, let's say energy, gas, orange juice, now the euro, and now crypto, all of those inherently have zero value inherent in them. There's nothing productive about them. There's nothing that's, if you look at the price of gold since the Roman times, they've done studies. If you take away inflation, it's 0% return. And all of land is the same. If you look at the price of land, you can track that at least 1,000 years back in the United States. It's 0% return. Like the only return you get over a long period of time is inflation, just to keep up with the value of money. And if you use leverage, if you risk and borrow, then you can leverage that inflation return and get a higher return. But with cryptocurrency, you're buying something that has no value. Whereas with a stock, let's say you're buying Shake Shack, you're buying land and you're buying equipment and you're buying a recipe that is feeding people. And so there's actual service that's being done. There's actual productive capital that's being used. If the company went under, there's all sorts of value that could be extracted. Whereas crypto, the moment someone says, I don't like that, the moment Elon Musk tweets out something, then it can lose all of its value within a second. So just to kind of like, this is kind of like, I'm shooting all these like, shots across the bow with crypto, but I can envision a world where it's, to me, for commodities, I'll go up to 3 to 5% of my portfolio because I love the diversification, because they go up when the stock market crashes, they go up because people like food, they're important when there's war, when there's recession. So I could see kind of crypto being a good diversifier in a portfolio, but I would never want to go up more than 5%, more likely 3. But even now, I don't want to do that because it's unregulated market. That to me is the number one thing I don't like. The stock market was unregulated for a long time. And what would happen is people with money, lots of money, all they do is they go in and they do what's called a pump and dump scheme. So they just drive the stock price up, and then everyone gets into frenzy, and then it drives it up, and then they just sell at the high. And the average investor is never privy to this. And so often when they see it going up, they buy at the high, and then they get taken out. And you've seen this in trading places with Eddie Murphy. It's called cornering the market. Like they did the orange juice, and it's completely illegal, that plot line, by the way. And meme stocks, with recently what we saw with AMC movie theater and a few other stocks. I know GameStop was another one. That's all illegal. And you're not allowed to just go into chat rooms and pump up a stock. But because it was all individuals doing it, the SEC, who regulate the markets, they couldn't quite prosecute because it didn't quite fulfill the laws that were in place. But with crypto, there's no regulator. I mean, there's a little bit of someone outside that will put you in jail if you murder someone, but you can just pump and dump all you want. And you can go into the chat rooms, stir things up. You can go and tweet and, or X, I don't know what the verb is for when you go out, but
we still say tweet.
Okay.
Everyone still does.
Yeah. So as a rule, this is just like a basic rule of, to me, a good steward is you don't go put God's money in unregulated markets. Like that to me, it seems crazy. And I know you can, get rich quick, but I don't want to get rich quick. God isn't paying me to get rich quick. And that's not God's design for people. And to me, a big windfall is one of the greatest curses that someone could get, because it actually encourages a gambling mentality. The idea of easy money, really resonate with 1 Timothy, which talks about those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, as you've mentioned. And that just sounds like crypto all over. That to me is incredible. If people are only in it because they want to make lots of money, that's the love of money right there. I could understand wanting to diversify your portfolio. I could get wanting to maybe diversify a little bit out of the US dollar. I still think currency is about power. And whoever wins with currency is not going to be some entrepreneur, some one person who, is a tech genius. It's going to be the person with the tanks and with the nuclear bombs. Like they're going to be the ones that control the currency. And government's not just going to give up their power and currency. If the US does kind of make crypto their default currency, they're going to control it. It's not like they're going to just say, oh, it's now up to the masses. And it's a huge gamut. It's a totally different thing. You're not investing if you're trying to pick what's the next currency the US is going to use. To me, that's not investing. That's like just pure gambling. And I would rather just focus on, as an investor, let me just figure out what are the companies with good business models making good products and services and just stick with that. That's a time tested, good steward way of acting. I want to just kind of close with this idea that there's an Aesop fable, and it's this idea. They call it the butcher's bone. And so we have this hungry dog, and he's starving, and a butcher sees him, has pity on him, gives him a good solid bone that's gonna kind of satisfy him. He's excited. He's got the bone. He's walking towards his home along a river, and he looks down at the river and sees his reflection. But what he thinks he sees is another dog with another bone. And so he says, oh, I could get two bones now. And so he lets go of his bone and then jumps in the water. Or I think maybe he jumps in the water with his bone, and then realizes instantly what he had done. And the water sweeps him away. And so he finally rescues himself, but he's wet and boneless. And so often that fable is kind of what I see happening, where people have a pretty good time-tested path where you just slowly invest in the stock market, buying products and services that move money towards, hopefully good culture, lowering the cost of capital of companies, which allows them to make more of their goods and services. And that's a slow process. Compounding interest will allow that to work really well over a long period of time. But someone's like, oh, I could get wealthy right now because if I choose the right crypto, then I'll get wealthy. So then they jump and they lose their stock market bone, and then they end up kind of just wet. And to me, you're kind of boneless if you succeed or if you don't, because it was the jumping in that's the problem. It's the love of money that's the problem. That's kind of corrupted your heart a bit. You should be satisfied and be really considerate about what you're doing with money, so that you walk a path that's level, that's of wisdom, that's not loving money, not trying to seek to get it, but just trying to seek to steward in a faithful way.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's that's a great way to really think about investing in general. It's just part of our stewardship. It's not something that makes us independent and able to call the shot and live our lives on our terms. Because again, if we are followers of Christ, then we should do everything to please Him and to live a life that is purposeful, based on what He's called us to do. And wealth only distracts. If we use it the wrong way, it could be a great tool that we could use to accomplish what God's given us. But if it becomes about the money, if it becomes about building our kingdom rather than His, then you're right. It is like the dog jumping in the water. That's the choice we've made to do the wrong thing. So regardless of what our result is, we may actually make money, which could actually ruin us rather than, So I think it's by the grace of God that many people are protected from becoming wealthy.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Because God knows, He knows the danger of wealth. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't pursue wealth, but it shouldn't be for wealth's sake. It should be with the intent of using it as God directs us to use it, not trying to emulate what the world is going after, which is wealth and riches and comfort and luxuries.
And considering what investment, like, why are you investing? What are you making? How is it going to impact culture? Don't just get into gambling, a new casino, because that's going to impact culture poorly. But if this is a new product or service and you have the dollars and everything lines up and it's going to earn a great rate of return, that all is great.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just, don't say this may or may not get me rich, and I don't really know, but everyone else is getting rich, so I'm going to jump in the water. You just don't quite want to do that type of world.
Right. Agreed. Hey, in just a couple of minutes that we have left, anything about AI investing, how that's going to impact investing going forward?
AI is really just going to allow more automation. So I just think it's going to keep the process going of eliminating intermediaries like brokers and So many people who are doing menial things, AI bots can do. So if you're doing anything that's menial, that's repetitive, an AI bot is going to completely do that for you. And so we're going to have AI bots that are kind of doing things like they could rebalance portfolios, they could do trading. You could just tell your AI bot, could you do this? Could you rebalance my portfolio to the allocation that I had here? Or could you just buy a little bit of this stock and could you wait to get this certain price? Like an AI bot will be able to do that instead of paying a broker to do it. The AI bots will also do better about accessing the private market deals. So yeah, I just think AI is going to be accelerating what's already happening with democratization of capital and with robo advising. It just like ramps that up as you create this kind of smart Jeeves person, pseudo person that's kind of, you just can ask it to do things. So that'll move, but what will be continue no matter what technology gives us is our cycle of greed and fear will always be there. And so we'll always kind of need to have the Spirit's oversight kind of guiding and guarding our hearts as we go through this.
Great place to end, Shane, that ultimately that's what it comes down to. Who are we depending on? Are we being led by the Lord, or are we being led by another spirit? That's something that we have to be very careful, because investing, it does have good purposes, but it can also obviously take us on the wrong path. And what I love about finances in general is that it allows the Lord to speak to me, and it's like a mirror. I can kind of see where my heart's leading based on the decisions that I make, good or bad. And the Lord can use that to say, hey, let's check your heart. Are you doing this for the right reason? And it is like a mirror to me, because it is something that interests me. Like you, finances was and is a major interest in my life, a passion. It used to be an unhealthy one. Hopefully now it's much healthier and hopefully led by the Lord most of the time. Not perfect, but trying to follow God's leading when it comes to this. And there's so much wisdom in the Word of God. What I love about our topic and what we've talked about over the last 4 weeks is that the Lord's put His Word in the Bible so that we can have access to that wisdom, so that we know how to connect with Him, continue to speak to us, so that we can make these decisions not just strictly from a practical standpoint, but from being led by His Spirit, so that what we're doing is actually doing what you have said so well, which is to build the kind of culture that God wants in our communities, one that is not looking just to our self-interest, but also to the interests of others. And that lines up with His will and His purpose. Well, Shane, thank you so much for doing this. This has been a huge investment on your part. I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us. A lot of your time in both getting ready, but also delivering all this information. I so appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's been a real pleasure to speak with you and provide this information to the audience of Christian Stewardship Network.
Great. I also would like you to just take a minute and let everyone know a little bit about what you're doing outside of what you're doing at Biola. Whole Heart Finances, your book, and that ministry. Go ahead and share about that.
Sure. So, really, at an early age, I became passionate about loving Jesus and my faith, but I also loved to learn about investing. And I'm a natural saver. I love like eighth wonder of the world, compounding interest is like my love language. So I felt like the language of money and the language of faith were incompatible, and that felt like a great need. To see if there was a way to learn about money that draws you near to the heart of Jesus and not farther away. Because it seemed like just a neat part of the creation that God's made to help steward money, grow it over time. But I also love the heart of a radically generous person. And so that tension, I am wanting to fully embrace, I'm wanting to write about, I'm wanting to research to help equip others to navigate that tension. So the book Whole Heart Finances is about how do you be a steward and be radically generous and do those things in relationship with Jesus, to where you're loving Him as you learn how to save and invest and manage credit and all these different things. So I kind of flesh out some theology, and really good work on money is where you do theology, where you look at God, who He is, and then you respond to it, versus what most people do in the church right now, if they're talking about money, is they do anthropology, where they look at what works in the world and they study man and man's culture, and then they give you a lot of tips, and then they try and sprinkle some verses on it to kind of make it Christian. I like it better when you start with God. And so that's kind of my approach. And so the website has kind of a beautiful 4-lesson type of, it's meant to be like a track. You used to have physical tracks like 4 Spiritual Laws, where you go through it with someone, you sit down, you swipe through it. This one you swipe through on the phone versus have a paper one. And it's 4 lessons about budgeting and credit, but also the heart behind it, and how you can do it in a way that draws you near in worship to Jesus. But yeah, I'm doing all sorts of fun other projects now. Like I'm working on a money storybook Bible where I have all these stories for kids, and I'm using the Bible to teach kids about money. There's over 2,000 verses. It's the second most discussed topic. And so I'm working through right now in the process of making a podcast on that. And so I'll keep you posted, but that's a real fun project. And then I am going to churches and helping them see the approach of whole heart finances and the theology and the practical coming together so that people can love Jesus, form liturgical practices of budgeting and of, watching over your credit that help shape your heart in good ways as steward and as lover of Jesus. But yeah, thanks for asking.
That's awesome. Well, again, you can check out what Shane is talking about on his website, wholeheartfinances.com. And if you'd like to know more about what he's doing, I know he speaks at churches, and he's actually coming to our CSN annual forum, and he'll actually be doing a breakout session there. And so please connect with him. You can find him on his website and find out how he might be able to help your church. Again, he has a love for stewardship, but love for Jesus more than anything. And he loves to impart this information and this knowledge to as many as are willing to listen. Shane, thanks again. I so appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
And I want to thank you for listening. Thank you so much for investing in listening to this podcast. We know it's your time and it's valuable. We thank you for taking the time to listen. If we can serve you in any way here at Christian Stewardship Network, please contact us. We're at christianstewardshipnetwork.com. And we would love to come alongside you and help you understand what stewardship and generosity ministry looks like in the context of your local church. We are a network of churches, leaders who are in the trenches doing this every day. And we'd love to resource you, inspire you, encourage you in any way to help you to do this as well if God is calling you to it. Thanks again for being with us. We look forward to seeing you next time on Stewardship Leader.